Before all of this, we were in a very, very rough patch. Not sure how exactly it started because up until that point, we've never once fought, and that was already a year into the relationship. Things started going downhill when he got a job and started college, since he didn't have as much time for me anymore the way he used to. I was aware that it's hard to adjust, and I fully understood that, but some of the things he'd do would gradually start making me feel unloved, especially considering the fact that we already had to battle with the long distance. Our first fight was unrelated to that, though. It was a whole different thing. I won't go into details, but it was something regarding religion that felt like an attack on my character. Although we share the same religion, he was raised super religiously while I, on the other hand, wasn't. He already knew about all of that and still willingly decided to be in a relationship with me, which is exactly why I got so offended and hurt by it, since he had never expressed that opinion before. I realize that I may have come off too strong with it now, but at the time I felt like it could escalate into a bigger problem later on just for it to be brushed off, so I felt the need to address it early on. We ended up resolving that, but even then I feel like he was really close to breaking up with me, despite it being our first fight. After that, everything started getting worse and worse. We'd fight so often, and as a result of that, he ended up breaking up with me 2 times, both times for the same reason. He felt like he didn't deserve me, and all he does is just hurt me over and over again. He essentially wanted to save me from the pain because he believed he wasn't built for any type of relationship, despite how much he loves me. This stemmed from hatred for his own self long before me, and the way he communicated in fights, which ended up becoming an even bigger issue than the initial reason the fight even started over. I felt constantly disrespected and unloved. During those fights, he was so apathetic it felt like I didn't even know him. Normally, this hurt me more than you could imagine, and I was just so confused on what could have changed for him to start behaving this way. Both times he broke up with me didn't last for long. We'd get back together the same day, but it still doesn't undermine how much it completely shattered my whole being. These occurrences lead me to starting to feel numb, disconnected, and lost. I was so terrified of trusting him again, since I felt like he was going to break up with me for the final time at any given moment. Because of this, I tried to make myself mentally check out of the whole thing so it would hurt less when that day comes. I was so convinced it's going to happen. Throughout these breakups, and maybe a few bigger fights, I'd confide in my 3 close friends, which I now realize was the biggest mistake I could have made. I'd tell them in detail about it, show texts, etc. At the time, I didn't think deeply of it since I was too hurt to even think everything through properly, and I just wanted some advice and guidance. One of them, who I deemed my closest friend, on one hand gave some good advice, but on the other just made things worse. She badmouthed him a lot, said some terrible things about him that I absolutely do not agree with, told me how she's so beyond disappointed that I'm letting someone walk all over me, that her view of me as a person is changing, etc. The second friend was even more aggressive with it. She even told me things such as, "I do not allow you to be with him anymore. I genuinely don't care. You will not be with him anymore," etc. That was so out of line that I couldn't even process what she was saying. That made me feel even more disrespected because I reached out to her purely for advice, not dictatorship over the actual decisions I'm going to make. The third friend was the most calm, and the one who gave me the best unbiased advice. She said that most of these fights are happening because we are long distance, and that most of them wouldn't even start, or would at least be resolved differently if we were able to be with each other in real life. And that truly ended up being the case. When me and my boyfriend met for the first time a month ago, friend number 1 didn't even bother to talk to me about it at all. She only asked how it was, and when I went on to explain everything and how happy I was, she completely ignored those messages and skipped past them. This rubbed me the wrong way, because as someone who considers herself to be my best friend, how are you not able to show any sort of happiness for me? It honestly really hurt me as well, because I feel like she's just so unsupportive now, even though it's ultimately my fault for sharing negative things while I was vulnerable and emotional. I just thought she was more mature than seeing everything in a black and white way, especially because her and her own boyfriend have been having almost the same issues as me and mine. I'm planning on talking to her about this, but I still feel like nothing can undo what I've already shared. I feel so guilty and awful even though I didn't do it out of ill intent because it completely warped their opinions of him. What I hate the most out of all is the bad-mouthing. I've never done it to any of their boyfriends, so why do they feel so entitled to do it to mine? I tried expressing how I feel regarding that, but they'd just say it's deserved. I just wish I could somehow go back in time to fix all of this. It hurts me immensely knowing that because of my own stupidity, people now think negatively of my boyfriend. I definitely won't be sharing anything regarding us anymore, but I still feel like it's too late for that now, and the damage has already been done. I don't know if I'm putting way too much thought into this, but it just bothers me. It might be even hypocritical to say since I essentially brought it upon myself, but it bothers me. I guess I just expected that the people closest to me would understand that every relationship has its ups and downs, that there's a lot of miscommunication that could happen, which results in things like that. Because that genuinely was the case with us, we were both just so tired of the fights and were always on edge, waiting for the next one to start. It was, what we thought, an endless cycle of just hurting each other. Now that it's over and we're in the best place we've ever been in, I keep thinking back on all of the things I've shared that I never should have. Next story. I never imagined betrayal could cut this cleanly, like glass through water, leaving everything looking the same from a distance, but forever changed beneath the surface. For years, I believed my marriage was steady, imperfect in ordinary ways, but honest in the ways that mattered. We kept a tin on the top shelf for coins, graduated to an envelope taped under the kitchen drawer for extra bills, and finally to a savings account we nicknamed Someday. We said no to small luxuries so that our shared future could feel large. A house with a tree in front, a spare room with sunlight, a dog that would circle its bed 3 times before sleeping. I thought love meant safety. I thought trust was the lock on the door we both carried a key to. The first cracks were quiet, so quiet I mistook them for the house settling. He began to come home late but arrived with takeout to soften the delay. He smelled like a different cologne than the one I'd bought him. He said a client had hugged him and it transferred. His phone learned new habits, face down on the table, then always in his pocket, then charging behind a closed bathroom door. Deadlines, he'd say, both palms up as if surrendering to my doubt. When I asked if everything was all right, he kissed my forehead, slow and practiced, and told me I worried too much. I wanted to believe him, so I believed hard enough to bruise. Money at least felt simple. Numbers don't lie, I told myself. Numbers have no tone. We checked the account together on Sundays, laughed at the decimals adding up. When I picked up extra shifts, he cooked and sent photos of the simmering pot, proof that we were a team. I kept a folder on my laptop called Someday, filled with house listings we couldn't yet afford, recipes for holiday dinners we would host one day, a list of baby names we weren't using yet but loved to say out loud. We were saving a life we hadn't reached. We were saving a promise. Then one morning, I logged in to pay the dentist. The balance looked wrong, as if the numbers had been typed by a stranger who didn't know our story. I blinked, refreshed, checked the routing, refreshed again. The money, our scraped coins, our careful hours, our maybe next month, was gone. Not dented or dinged. Gone. I called him. No answer. I called again. On the 4th try, he picked up. I heard traffic, then his voice flat as newsprint. I took the money. For a moment, the kitchen lost its edges. I leaned against the counter and slid down the cabinet like a curtain being drawn. What do you mean you took it? That's our future. A pause, long enough to arrange a different life inside it. I'm leaving, he said. I'm going back to her. Her. The ex he had called a mistake, a closed chapter stored in a box we never opened. My mouth formed questions, but my throat refused them. He didn't argue. He didn't apologize. He ended the call. The apartment expanded by 10 sizes and still couldn't hold my breath. After that, I measured time in small survivals. Wash your face, put on shoes, answer 2 emails, eat half an apple. I moved through rooms that still held him. The jacket on the hook, the toothbrush by the sink, a coffee mug with a crescent of brown at the rim. I could not make sense of the ordinary objects that had continued living after the person who used them had turned into a thief. The bank said the transfers were authorized from our joint account. Of course they were. The bank did not have a field for betrayal. I changed passwords, opened a new account in my name, sat on hold until the music looped and looped and looped again. The woman on the line said she was sorry, the kind of sorry that exists only in customer service. I thanked her because there was no other script. People came with the best words they had. You'll be better off. He'll get what's coming. At least you found out now. I nodded, grateful for their trying, even as the words slid off me like rain on a jacket I wasn't wearing. At night, I told the ceiling a different truth. I missed him. I missed the idea of him, which hurt worse because I had to grieve someone I had invented with him. One afternoon, a mutual friend sent a message that was shaped like concern, but carried a photograph. The two of them at a lake I did not recognize. Sun on the water like coins, their smiles wide and rehearsed. A caption: New beginnings. In the comments, little hearts bloomed. My mouth filled with the taste of pennies. I put my phone in the freezer because the cold felt like control. Bills do not care about plot twists. Rent approached, then arrived. I sold the necklace my grandmother had given me, then the spare chair we never loved. I stacked coins, rolled bills, learned which grocery aisle hid the cheapest pasta. I discovered that grief has a soundless scream that can last for hours without waking the neighbors. Therapy became a place where my mouth could keep pace with my heart. The first sessions were rainstorms, everything at once. Later sessions were backbones. He stole from me, I practiced. He didn't borrow. He didn't make a mistake. He emptied our future into his past. My therapist asked what I wanted to protect now. Myself, I said, and the word felt new in my mouth. Anger arrived like weather, sudden, cleansing. I let it warm me without letting it burn the house down. With anger came the smallest, sharpest boundaries. I stopped checking their photos. I blocked his number, then unblocked it, then blocked it again. The emotional equivalent of turning a light on and off in an empty room just to prove electricity exists. I wrote letters I did not send. In them, I said what I had learned. That money is ours stacked carefully. That love without honor is appetite. That leaving is one thing and looting is another. Work helped because it demanded pieces of me he could not take. I picked up extra shifts. I learned to like cheap, filling meals. I walked instead of riding when I could. I bought the smallest bouquet at the bodega and put it in a jar. The room looked less like aftermath, more like a beginning that belonged to me. Weeks turned, and with them a rumor. The money was burning fast. Their lake trips gave way to smaller scenes. The sun in their photos grew cooler. They fought, said the messenger, about the future and the past, as if those are two wardrobes to choose from. For a second, I felt vindicated, and then the feeling dissolved. His downfall would not refill my account. His arguments could not be cashed. Justice would not arrive wearing his regret. It would arrive wearing my patience. I opened a spreadsheet and made it beautiful because beauty helps me listen. In one column, debts, dates, due. In another, hours, wages, plans. I added a third column called reasons. Some cells I left blank because the reasons were simply because I am alive. I learned that a plan does not erase pain, but it gives pain somewhere to sit besides on my chest. There were still nights when the ache set a place at the table and ate with me. On those nights, I let it sit. I poured it water. I told it stories of the person I was becoming, the woman who called the bank twice, who learned to fix the leaky faucet, who remembered she likes the window open at night and does not need to negotiate the temperature with anyone. The ache grew bored and left before dessert. I started hosting tiny dinners for people who had been constant. 2 plates, 3 spoons, laughter as seasoning. I came home, put food in the fridge, and sat a moment on the floor, not from sadness, but from the clean surprise of realizing I had not been undone by the sight of him. I texted a friend a single sentence. The opposite of revenge is living. She replied with a heart and then, because she knows me, asked if I had eaten. I had. I began to rename the folder called Someday. It became Soon, and then Now. I printed out one house listing, not because I could buy it, but because I wanted to practice wanting without fear. I hung it on the wall and wrote on a sticky note, not a dream, an eventual. I made a list of things I wanted to learn, how to hang shelves level, how to negotiate a salary, how to choose a melon by scent. I made a second list of things I already knew, how to make a soup from whatever is left, how to keep a plant alive, how to leave a room better than I found it. The second list comforted me more than the first. Sometimes people asked, would you take him back if he apologized? The question clanged around the room like a dropped pan. I said I would accept an apology, and I would keep walking. Forgiveness, I learned, is not a doorway. It is a boundary line you don't cross back over. I could forgive him for being a man I didn't recognize, I could not rehire him for the job of my life. On the anniversary of the day the account went empty, I took the morning off. I made coffee and drank it slowly by the window. I wrote the year a letter. You were not gentle, but you taught me the map of my own bones. You took things I thought I needed to live, and then you stayed long enough for me to prove I could live without them. I folded the letter and slid it into the back of the someday frame. It felt right to keep record inside possibility. If he thinks of me now, I hope accuracy visits him. I hope he remembers not the woman crying on the kitchen floor, but the woman who stood up and made a list, made a call, made dinner, made rent. I hope he understands that he took what he could carry and ran, and what he could not carry. My character, my patience, my stubborn, renewable hope, I kept. The money he stole was a future we planned together. The future I am building now is one he cannot enter. It is slower, yes, and honest, and mine. When I pass the coffee shop where we used to sit, I do not flinch. I order what I like. I tip well. I take my time. I walk home under a sky that does not ask me to explain myself. I am not what was taken from me. I am what remains and what grows. I am the woman who learned to put her own name on the account, and her own name on the lease, and her own name on the story. The tin on the top shelf is back, for coins that sing when they land. The envelope is back, thickening. The savings account exists again, quiet and factual, like a promise kept in a language numbers understand. One day there will be a front door with a tree out front and a dog that circles its bed 3 times before sleeping. There will be a spare room with sunlight that moves across the floor like a slow dance. There will be dinners that I cook because I want to feed people who never asked me to starve for them. There will be holidays where I set the table for exactly the number of hearts present, and not one less. Someday becomes soon, soon becomes now. He chose to return to his past. I choose every morning to walk toward my future ordinary and luminous. I carry the only keys I need,